is my pleasure to talk about this today. It's a passion of mine to do pollution prevention, as you can see from my history with our agency. And so I have the pleasure of combining both now when I returned to IDEM 2 years ago. So I'm not able to forward this. Is that something on here? So I thought I would start off with a little bit of a background of what IDEM does, just an overview, and get a little bit further into our office. So IDEM is a state regulatory agency created in 1986 in Indiana, and our mission is to protect the environment and human health while maintaining a prosperous economy. And because if we didn't have the economy healthy and vibrant, we couldn't have a healthy environment. So our state, we would try to balance both. And so we are working, I skipped ahead mode.
It's not working in full screen mode.
Oh, okay.
You use the microphone. We do have.
I can.
We have 6 people online.
6 people online. Okay. Can we see it now? Okay. Got it? Okay. So I'm going to cover I'll go back to my first slide, introduce IDEM, talk a little bit more about our PTO programs, and then I'm going to go into our FB, and then a little bit more about P2, and then how we have combined that with some of the CTAP work that we do. And when we originally talked about this idea of having the session, Brent from Ohio had said, why don't we talk about ideas that the group could implement at their state, but also throw it out there to see, are there other ideas or regulations or things that might be impacting that we could also take back and apply with P2 in mind. So, so that's the P2 strategies, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the resources that we use. So as I said, actually 1985, 86 is when we began operating as IDEM, and I already told you the mission. And so our agency structure is air quality, water quality, land quality. Our Office of Program Support is where I'm housed. Office of Chief of Staff, and Office of Legal Counsel. And if we post this online, you can also go to our IDEM 101 presentation about our agency, if you're curious. So Office of Program Support is broken up into office, or my section, which is the Pollution Prevention and Compliance Assistance section, and the Recycling and Reporting section. And so under my group are the Compliance and Technical Assistance Program and the Pollution Prevention Programs. So our P2 programs, we've, over the years, we've grown through some grant agreements with EPA. We've started some programs, and other states have these similar programs. The Environmental Stewardship Program is similar to what Kentucky does in their Excel program in other states. I know Ohio has one similar. It's a voluntary program, and we recognize businesses for going above and beyond. And so we have a lot of businesses that we have 55, 56 members, and they commit to doing voluntary reductions, 1 per year. And then we record all their outcomes, and they're recognized for being a part of that program. We also have the Indiana Partners for Pollution Prevention, and that's a different type of organization. We are actually a member of that group. It's a little bit like a club, so to speak. We have industries, businesses, consultants, and other governmental entities involved, and we hold quarterly meetings, and we go to a host facility every quarter, and we tour the facility. We learn about their sustainability opportunities that they have done at their industry, and then that's an opportunity for the businesses to network as well and learn different P2 technologies that are available. So this has been very, very successful. We've got around 99 members in this group, and we get a lot of results, pollution prevention results from them. They love to hear about regulatory things as well. So we do an agency update at each of the quarterly, a regulatory update for them. The Comprehensive Local Environmental Action Network, or otherwise known as CLEAN Community Challenge, is another grant-initiated project that we focus on communities, and we do pollution prevention focus in that, but we also work with them on compliance issues as well to get into the program. So our compliance and technical assistance folks work with the communities up front to make sure that they're meeting all their environmental compliance prior to joining this program. Right now we only have 15 communities. We had a break in the program coverage last year, so it was vacant for about a year, and so we kind of lost some momentum that we had, and so we're reinvigorating that program, and we have a new person on board, so he's doing a great job with that. So they also commit to do pollution prevention, one project a year. We include the Clean Vessel Grant Program in our pollution prevention and boating infrastructure grant program, because that is funding for installing pump outs and dump stations and floating restrooms at marinas. We actually house that grant program. It's a little different. It's funded through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and so we've grown that program as well, and we're still funding those means of disposal. Indiana Clean Marina Program is a compliance-focused program, and is for marinas to look at all the various areas where they might have compliance needs, and they go through a checklist for the marina, and it can be both compliance and P2 related items, and then they become a member after they complete all of the items on the checklist. Then they get recognition, they get some benefits through the agency as well. The Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence, we have actually opened this year. We have 7 categories, so we will recognize one entity in each of those categories. And we have pollution prevention, 5 years continuous improvement, greening the government, let's see, what am I forgetting? Energy and land use, conservation. There's one other one, but we cover a very broad spectrum with those. And I know that other states do similar awards. We're trying to get the information from these folks so that we can share it with other companies. We hold that, we hold an event and give the awards. They will also be presenting on their projects, so to transfer that technology or ideas to other businesses. So getting into compliance and technical assistance program, this is our new logo this year, helping Indiana businesses one step at a time. And so we are the SB for the state. And here's a map of the regions. Sorry, it's a small, but we have Northwest and then a Northern regional office, a central office, and then a Southwest and a Southeast office. And I think I mentioned 9 staff, and 1 in each of the regional offices and 5 in the central office. So we are non-regulatory, and we do have, we maintain the confidentiality, we're free, and we provide all types of assistance. So, we'll focus on a single area, or we will look at the entire facility and help them with all of their compliance needs. And it doesn't matter what area, we focus on a lot of different areas in multimedia. So getting into Pollution Prevention Act, we, over the past year or year and a half, because my background is in pollution prevention and some of the compliance inspector in me, I was wanting to do more combined effort. So the P2, for those of you that don't really focus on P2, this definition is, we focus on preventing pollution at the source. That is at the P2 Act established that should be the first step, and then recycle if possible, then treat, then dispose. So representing the hierarchy, which actually is on the next slide. So some of the things that the P2 Act established in its language was some of these resources that we now have. The P2 Information Clearinghouse, the calendar that's available, the resource centers through P2RX, newsletters and EPA publications. There's a subject index and case studies. And once this is posted, those blue links will take you directly there. So as I said, that defined this waste management hierarchy. Energy recovery is stuck in there. You'll see this in various formats. Sometimes people add something at the top called refuse. So we're working from the top down. So P2 is any practice that reduces, eliminates, or prevents pollution at its source, called source reduction, rather than trying to control it or dispose of it afterwards. So it's getting a little bit more in depth into the definition. It's focusing on any hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant entering any waste stream or otherwise released to the environment. That includes fugitive emissions, so prior to recycling, treatment, or disposal. And it reduces the hazards to public health and the environment associated with those substances, pollutants, or contaminants. And so hazardous is, in the general broad sense, includes a lot of the federally listed chemicals or pollutants. So we also include natural resource conservation in pollution prevention. So increase efficiency in the use of raw materials and energy, water, or other resources, and protection of natural resources by conservation. P2 does not include these following things. So energy recovery is not pollution prevention. A lot of people think it is, in our state anyway. Treatment of a waste stream, disposal, recycling, any practice that alters a hazardous substance or pollutant or contaminant once it's already been generated, any practice that isn't necessary for protection, and anything that creates new risk to human health or in the environment. And it also doesn't, we don't want to transfer the pollution from one medium to the other. So we don't want to move, take an air pollution through a scrubber, put it in the water. That's not pollution prevention, that's control, obviously. But that's what we end up doing when it's pollution control instead of pollution prevention. It's just move from air to water, then move it from the water to the land and back again. So we're trying to avoid that cycle. So why do we want to do P2? It increases operational efficiencies, reduces risk, and effectively meets environmental responsibilities. And it offers economic, regulatory, environmental, and social benefits that can make our businesses more competitive. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the P2 process of how we would work with a company, what we're trying to walk them through. So we tell them they need to obtain management support. It costs them money to implement some of these ideas. It's going to cost them time and resources. So we help them to present logical reasoning behind their requests. So as a CTAP representative, we're going in and saying, you know what, it's here you're generating this waste, you're going to have disposal costs, but where did you also waste the raw material, the raw materials now? You lost those are raw materials. So we're identifying the opportunities within their business. And we also tell them, what their regulatory requirements are related to those areas. So we can provide them ideas to obtain management support. We also can help them create a general process flow diagram. This is not only needed for permitting actions, which you might be working with them already on, but they may just say, I don't know what all we do in this process. So help me walk through and let's look at the different pieces. We look for regulatory areas, but you can also start noticing, hey, what are you doing with that waste that's coming off of the filter press or whatnot? And do you really have to run it? What can you eliminate out of your process, or what is necessary? So we're going to determine where the materials are used and where waste is being generated. So that requires typically a tour of the facility. And boy, do we ask a lot of questions of a lot of people. So creating detailed itemizations of those various things. So we may walk them through the entire tour. We're going to tell them what regulatory areas they need to comply with, possibly give them a few ideas while we're walking it through. Then we ask them to go through and detail these processes and establish baselines for themselves. We can't do that for them because we're outside, but they can do that. They can know. We can say, okay, look at that. What is your baseline? What's the full cost of this? Did you include all the energy that you spent? Did you include all your raw materials? What have you done in that entire process? So we ask them to do that for the materials, for the work practices, waste generation, waste disposal. And we also ask them to consider the life cycle inventory. How many of you are familiar with that term? Some of you, yeah. So the goal is to do that comparison of the full range of environmental effects assignable to the products and services, and then quantifying all the inputs, outputs of material flows, and how they affect the environment. So they can identify aspects and impacts to the environment. Here's a more visual representation of that. So they are identifying the inputs, and then what part of their process is it materials acquisition, formulation, product distribution, product use, are they recycling recycled products, components, materials, and then waste management. And then what are the outputs? So sometimes we're here on this side first. We know the outputs. We know from the permits that they've had to get that they have water effluent or they have waste. And then we can go back through and find out where that came from in their process. So we asked them to identify where in their process, they could implement a pollution prevention project. And then they need to do some self-analysis. Do they have, what's the greatest negative impact that they have in their process? Are they using certain expensive raw materials in one of the processes that are being wasted? Do they have special handling requirements that, if they reduce from the beginning, could be avoided? Is it regulated? That's a big one, usually. Is it costly just to dispose of? Is it easy to reduce? So we ask them to consider these things. And then we, once they have their baselines and we've asked them to identify, we've asked them to identify their goal, then we ask them to move it along, implement, do the plan, do, check, act, do the cycle again, continuous improvement. So part of this is identifying, so they've identified all those streams and all of those baselines and everything, and we have lots of various tools that have pollution prevention ideas for various industries. They're widely available through the PTO centers and various checklists, and we've developed some of our own internal ones. But so we have a baseline, and then identify the targets, hold a brainstorming session with the folks involved. So you're going to have the line operator involved in that. You're going to have the purchasing person involved. You're going to have everyone that has some sort of piece or part to the whole process involved. Then you'll want to identify those obvious waste reduction measures. We call those low-hanging fruit. Target and characterize those problem waste streams, and then develop long-term waste reduction alternatives. Not all of them will be able to be implemented right away. So we need to identify those things. And they may say, well, we just don't have it in our budget this year to substitute something else, or we'd like to put that on our long-term plan. So we say, okay, go ahead, do that. But we could go back up to the beginning and get some really quick results from some of the low-hanging fruit. So like I said, we asked them to consider a wide range of pollution prevention techniques and look for other information. And we come in as a technical assistance provider. So some of the ideas, the techniques that for each target area that we see often are either input raw material modifications, substitutions, product reformulation, the unit actual redesign, modernization. It could be just installing one little piece that creates a whole new opportunity for them. Maybe their cutting knife is creating an issue with their piece and they get a lot of reject parts. Well, what can you do to the knife to make that a better cut? So just looking at ideas like that. Production changes or process optimization. In-process recycling. A lot of people, I know it's been an argument through organizations about process recycling, whether it is actually PTO or whether it's recycling. And I think that we've come to an agreement that if it's integral to the process and they're reclaiming something, a solvent or something, and it's looping right back into the process, let's consider pollution. Closed loop versus offsite or separate functions. Do you do that, have that same consideration, or?
So if they come to a 5-gallon bucket and they take that 5-gallon bucket and they dump it into my distillation, I distill it overnight, take that distill, put it back into my gun cleaner. Okay. Not closed loop, but I'm doing that on-site distillation.
Yes.
And I'm keeping raw material in.
And you're considering that pollution prevention, so yeah.
Yeah, but I'm interested.
There's a whole debate about it, but I think that we would probably still do that pollution prevention as well. We're mainly concerned with off-site. That's definitely not pollution prevention, it's more recycling. So preventive maintenance and improved housekeeping, those are areas that they can really benefit from and are really sometimes no-brainer. I mean, they really should be doing anyway. And so those sometimes are really the low-hanging fruit. Training improvements, something that's not very expensive, but may make a world of difference. Best management practices, packaging, shipping, waste stream segregation, and the inventory control. Inventory control has been a huge one for regulatory integration as well, because if you have a whole bunch of raw materials that you're storing, there's a certain point that you're not using those, and you have to make that determination. Are they now a waste? And are you going to classify them as a waste? We had a company who kept saving all their stains. They thought, well, we'll have a job that requires walnut stain, in the next year or so, and we'll use that later. Well, they kept them all, and it became more of a RCRA issue then, because they didn't do the work that was necessary to get first in, first out, get them used when they were actually needed to be used. A lot of these efforts can just become a routine process of their daily operations. We want it to become that way, like worker safety and customer satisfaction. So some of the things I've already mentioned, but the third one down, purchasing durable, long-lasting materials may be a way to reduce waste, reducing the amount of packaging that goes in on a product, on an end product. Water conservation. We see a lot of water conservation, energy conservation, environmentally benign fuel sources, production processes, changing those to make less waste. Reusing materials. Returnable dunnage has been a huge change for a lot of industries. So does everybody know what I mean by that? So returnable dunnage is where a company, we actually saw it at Subaru, where they receive parts from Japan, and they have a styrofoam case, basically, that their parts arrive in, and they ship that styrofoam back to Japan because it costs them less. They're reusing that styrofoam container over and over, and they have they don't have the solid waste to dispose of. They keep returning it back to Japan, and they actually mark how many times that it's been to Japan and back with, and that's a reduction in solid waste. So, and then I already talked about maintenance activities. So as we've incorporated P2 into compliance assistance, we're looking at ways, while we're looking for what regulations apply, we're looking for ideas along the lines of pollution prevention. And so, as I said, we are looking at the processes. We often look at a whole process, or even a single problem area. We can identify P2 opportunities. We have some various checklists and sector guides, and we use the available P2 resources that are available through EPA. Some of our source specific pollution prevention guides, I've put our copy of our website here. We've created for only 7 different industries. And so maybe we need to do some more work on this. And I think Ohio, who's talking next, they've done more work on this side of it than we have. And we also have a self-assessment, pollution prevention opportunity self-assessment for our businesses to go on and do themselves. So this is just a brief shot of one of the checklists. I'm not going to go through all these because I'm almost out of time, 5 minutes. But the check marks, all of those relate to an air emission. So only one on this checklist is more of a RCRA issue, but things like substituting hazardous substances for less hazardous, more biodegradable materials. They could potentially get themselves out of a certain level of air permit. Optimizing mixing and agitation to reduce the use of heat and generation of undesirable byproducts. So less energy draw for that, less boiler operation possible. I like the one at the bottom, improving reactor mixing to increase the effectiveness of catalysts, so they're not inserting more catalysts into the process. Implementing training that'll reduce, make sure that the handling and disposal techniques are appropriately done. All of the ones on the fabricated metal products are focused on air quality. And I think we've seen a lot of these applied to 6W, or we're focused on 6W, but like reducing drag out from degreasers. So you want to, those were a lot of P2 activities in that role, but they also apply to these various other industries. So reduce that drag out from one tank to the next. And obviously you can check out the rest of the list. Metal component degreasing. So replacing solvent-based degreasers with aqueous-based degreasers, keeping the unit covered, which is part of our regs anyway. Avoid heating the fluid to eliminate air releases and drag out once again. So those are checklists. You're welcome to visit our website and take a look at them. That is a link to it. We use the EPA P2 resources and calculators, the Toxic Use Reduction Institute from UMass Lowell is very useful. They have a lot of solvent substitution information. And the Great Lakes Regional Pollution Prevention Roundtable has so much research on P2, but all of the P2 RX centers do, and they are listed at the EPA website. So, and I guess we'll take questions after Dan's done.
Maybe sorely disappointed. All right, so next up, in true Tiger form. Tiger style. Dan Sorey currently serves as the Assistant Chief of Ohio EPA's Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention, OCAP, within the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Dan oversees Ohio EPA's Sustainability Program, Pollution Prevention Program, Compliance Assistance Program, the Ohio Materials Marketplace Program, Recycling and Litter Prevention Program, and Encouraging Environmental Excellence Program. Prior to this, Dan worked as supervisor in OCAP's Compliance Assistance Program, as the Central District Office OCAP representative, and as the Hazardous Waste Technical Assistance representative in Ohio EPA's Division of Environmental Response and Revitalization. He started his Ohio EPA career in the Division of Air Pollution Control's Mobile Sources section, where he led the state's vehicle emission anti-tampering program. Prior to working for the agency, Dan worked for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources as a naturalist for the state parks. Dan earned a bachelor's degree in environmental biology in 1996 and has over 18 years of experience working at Ohio EPA.
And that, guess who has the mic? So I was a naturalist. That's kind of weird, right? Like, what does that mean? Kind of ran around naked all over the state parks. Hey, I was being natural. All right, I don't need to introduce myself with that thing. All right, so what I'm going to talk about is how we implemented P2, and that's why I asked Jennifer to go first, because she went into really great detail about exactly what P2 is. So I don't have to do that. So I'm going to give you some background, who we are, how we're organized, our goals and objectives. There's one, it's just one primary goal. Our P2 integration, our implementation strategies, the results, and then some future stuff that we're doing. So we are a multimedia program. I think just like IDEM, we're 100% confidential. All of our services are free. We basically help businesses and communities stay out of trouble. We give them money. Why not, right? Got to give people money. Makes them happy. And then we also recognize them for going above and beyond. But we were formed from 3 different programs. And as Jennifer said, the other Jennifer, there's a lot of Jennifers. We are the Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention, and it's a key thing that you see that we actually have silos. That's the whole point of my presentation, is breaking down the silos within our own program. We have silos right in our own name: compliance assistance and pollution prevention. So I worked in hazardous waste for a number of years in a technical services unit. And what I did was I provided, it wasn't confidential, I did rat people out every once in a while, but the whole goal was to help businesses stay out of trouble with the hazardous waste rules. And so when OCAP was formed, I'm like, oh crap. And so that's what I started calling them, because they're going to take over my job. Well, eventually I decided, well, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. So I applied for the Central District Office for Central Ohio, OCAP position, and we refer to those folks as OCAPers. That's our little affectionate name. And they asked me, most people know Rick Harleski. He asked me, why did you call us OCRAP? And I'm like, well, I felt threatened, very threatened. All right, so we had 3 different offices. We had the Office of Pollution Prevention. This is a state-sponsored program. We had a Small Business Assistance Office. Again, this was a state-sponsored program. It was a representative that said, you know what, I want something multimedia for just Central Ohio businesses. I think the idea was to expand across the state, but it only stayed in central office. And it was to create fact sheets and guidance documents that made sense out of all the rules. Plain English format, basically the direction everybody's gone now. And then lastly, the 507, which most of us are familiar with in this room. So all 3 of these were combined to create OCAP. So here's how we're organized. The big key thing is we have district staff that handle the compliance assistance end, and then the central office staff handle the pollution prevention aspects. Oh, and Jennifer went into the P2 definition, the strict definition of it. We're looking at it as an assistance effort towards more sustainability. So when I talk about P2 and some of the integration stuff that we're doing, I'm not talking about just strictly P2 and source reduction, minimizing at the source. I'm actually talking about recycling the whole gamut, anything that helps that business and helps the environment and helps our economy in some way, shape, or form. So we have 5 district offices. Our central office and our central district office are in the exact same building in downtown Columbus. We have 8 staff in our environmental specialists, and that's just like 90% of the Ohio EPA is just environmental specialists. Around in the different district offices, 2 in each of the northern districts, and then I'm adding another one down in the southwest actually right now. And then 1 in central and 1 in southeast. And you have to wonder, because southeast, look at all those counties. Southeast district has more counties, but nobody lives there. That's Appalachia, man. You're playing banjos down there. Then our central office staff, they handled all the P2 sustainability stuff. But because the 2 offices were formed, and this is before I joined, so I didn't walk in with the baggage, but there's baggage in the program where the central office staff were like, no, I only do P2 and nobody else can possibly learn this. It's the most difficult thing in the world. But they wanted to preserve what they do, and they've been doing it for 20-some years. The district office staff, they were formed afterwards, and we slowly added more and more people into the districts. They didn't have that mentality whatsoever, but they only dealt with compliance assistance. And a lot of it was air, and that's because Rick Harleski came out of the 507 program. And it's just the nature of the beast. Air is a nightmare, absolute nightmare. How anybody ever wraps around their mind around air pollution, kudos to you, because that is some difficult stuff. I thought hazardous waste made no sense. Air takes the cake. All right, just to give you an idea of what we do on an annual basis, we help over 5,000 businesses. We complete about 1,000 permit applications for businesses, some communities as well, but primarily for businesses. A lot of those are air. Conduct 200 to 300 site visits. That's where we're going out to the facility and helping with their compliance needs or their pollution prevention needs. And we love writing publications. We have more publications in our office than all of the rest of the divisions, programmatic divisions, do combined. And I think that's a good thing, because a lot of them start their publications with pursuant to Ohio Administrative Code. Like, Seriously, unless you're an attorney, you're not going to get that one. So primary goal, and I am in management now, and I use this phrase all the time, goals and objectives. You got to have goals and objectives. You got to use these little catchphrases. Then you're like, wear a tie and you're in management. Boom. Dan, something's changed in you. I'm like, yeah, I stopped talking in meetings. I started wearing a tie. Boom. I end up in management. But the big primary goal when I got into this management role was expand P2. It's not doing enough. It needs to do more. Expand it. So here was our challenge, and I've already explained this, but the district office staff focused on the compliance assistants, the central office staff only on P2, and neither one of them, especially the central office, they were real guarded. Nobody can ever take our job. There's no way anybody can do this. It's called compliance assistance and pollution prevention for a reason, because they're different. And it never made any sense to me. So when I was an environmental specialist, I've been in the program for a decade now. When I was an environmental specialist, I was an OCAPper in Central Ohio. This didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I could not understand how you can't blend the two together. So central office staff were very fearful when they saw me get into management, because they knew I barked about this all the time when I was at the bottom. Now I'm at the top and I can say, oh, guess what we're gonna do? So we're gonna implement all kinds of P2 strategies right into our compliance assistance. As you know, businesses are challenged by these regulations, and there are all kinds of opportunities in the P2 world to actually reduce your regulation, if not just eliminate it completely in certain programs. But it's difficult for businesses to figure out these type of technologies. So here's what we did, and we don't look like that. But yeah, they're wearing ties, spread collar. Yeah. So our solution was, every time that the P2 staff and central office went out to, and here's the other thing, this is just resource wise. I had central office staff traveling to the corners of the state. It made absolutely no sense to drive 3 hours one way when there's already a district person sitting up there that can easily do this. I know it's so mind blowing and nobody could ever learn this, but you know what, the compliance assistant staff, no offense, but they have to know every freaking regulation. Like, how do you say that they don't have the intellectual capacity to understand P2? But, so we had all the district staff, anytime that there was a P2 site visit scheduled in the area over the past 2 years, the district staff accompanied and learned right alongside with the experts in our central office. Then we said, hey, central office staff, you're going to sit down with the district office staff. And we literally, Brent was the one who did this. Anybody who knew Brent and the central office supervisor, they told the staff, they said, listen, you guys figure it out. And here's your objective, here's your goals and objectives. And you guys figure it out. And they left the room. And the staff, they squabbled quite a bit, had their storming session, but they came up with really, really cool toolkits. And in the process, they actually ended up cross-training each other just through the creation of these toolkits. But here's the key. This is the big difference. When they did P2 site visits, full-blown P2 site visits, they very rarely, just because they didn't have as much knowledge on the compliance end, they didn't focus on a regulatory incentive. So that's the whole key of my presentation. It's time to start texting, go to sleep, whatever you need to do. This is the whole thing I wanted to get across, is a regulatory incentive was where I think we had been missing the mark for a long, long time. So are there ways, like if you, and if I'm speaking French for some of you, let me know, but like stormwater permits, we have no exposure. I think everybody does, but I don't know. I think that's a federal. I see a lot of heads nodding. Can you find ways to keep your materials under roof? That's pollution prevention. You're eliminating it at the source, but there's a huge regulatory incentive. And what we found is that businesses, they don't like us, okay? We all know that. We live this every single day. They don't like us necessarily getting into their business. What's it going to cost them, et cetera. So, and this whole P2 concept, that's nice, warm and fuzzy, like hippie environmental. tree-hugging stuff. But you know what? They will implement P2 when they can get out of a regulation, because I don't have to deal with all you regulators. So that was our hook. So, and I think a lot of you guys do this as well. When our inspectors go out, they actually, on their notice of violation letter, that's what we call them, I don't know what everybody else calls them, but NOV, they actually put the OCAPR in their district at the bottom of the notice of violation letter and say, contact them for assistance, if they think it's a good fit. If it's just egregious stuff, they don't do that. But that's a great opportunity for us to get in there and say, hey, you know what, if you did this, this, and this, material substitution, why don't you use acetone instead of using xylene and toluene and these hacks? You know, acetone's an exempt VOC and a hack. Awesome. If it works, why not? That's definitely, correct me if I'm wrong, that's P2, material substitution. So we developed these toolkits with a regulatory incentive. We came up with industry-specific, process-specific type of list. We also came up with checklists. I'm hiring 7 new staff because I finally got approval from the big dog to allow me to fill all these vacancies. I wanted 10, I got 7. Some divisions are getting none. So it's still a monumental accomplishment to get that. So we will be almost fully staffed. But with all these new folks coming in, we want them to be able to hit the ground running, not have to spend years and years and years to get all that institutional knowledge. So we created these checklists and toolkits with that in mind. So when these folks are going out to a business and they're going to go see a plating operation, they have boom, boom, boom. Here's all the things that you can try to target with that business. Again, it's tied to a regulatory incentive. The other thing we did is we incorporated our P2 concepts into our guidance documents. We didn't put it at the warm and fuzzy end like a green leaf and somebody hugging a tree at the end of the document. We put it right in the middle where it says, hey, you know, if you do X, Y, Z, you have an SIC code that matches this, you're going to need this. However, you maybe can avoid it by doing blah, blah, blah. So we put it right into the actual documents where they speak of that. Now the central office staff, they still do the full-blown P2 site visits. That has not gone away, and they serve as the subject matter experts. All right, so the outcome, we tripled the number of P2 site visits. We're now helping thousands of businesses with P2 versus just the compliance assistance. Again, we're incorporating the regulatory incentives in all of our publications. I'm going to talk about this next one, the Ohio Materials Marketplace, but we've increased exchanges there and decreased the number of permit applications that we're completing for businesses. So the Materials Marketplace, well, this is like a free online dating service, if you will, for waste. So it's like eHarmony. I'd call it e-waste, but that has another meaning to all of us. So, but it's kind of like a dating service. It's a way for you know, one waste to find another use, so it doesn't end up really being considered a waste in some ways. How many states have something like this? What a few. Even New Jersey represented. Yeah. And by the way, we have a Ohio Clean Marinas as well. And a gentleman, I went up to their conference and a gentleman from New Jersey showed up and he said, oh, Ohio's doing the same thing that New Jersey already did. You're creating a permit to install exemption for closed loop wash water pads for boats. And I'm sitting in the audience and I'm like, that's not true, but I'm not going to counter you. But now I'm actually working with our Division of Surface Water to create that exact same thing. So it's actually a great idea. Anyway, back to Materials Marketplace. We wanted to create an economic value for Ohio's businesses. We obviously wanted to divert materials from the landfills, but we also wanted to become the leaders in the circular economy. So the whole idea with the circular economy is, well, we don't have it, first off. We're a linear economy. You take materials out of the environment, you make a product, and then you literally throw the byproducts and the product away at the end of its life. It makes no sense whatsoever. Sustainability-wise, we're doomed as a species. We're doomed in our economy. You cannot continue to do that. So with the materials marketplace, we're trying to change that. One of the things that really separates us apart, because it's kind of like Craigslist, except for Craigslist is passive. There's nobody behind the scenes. When you post like, hey, I have a tricycle or whatever, and somebody wants to come get your kid's tricycle, and you got some weirdo that shows up and tries to trade you an Arrowhead or something for it, I'm telling you, those people, whoo, I'm never doing Craigslist again. That was some strange stuff. Now I lost my whole point. We're actively behind the scenes trying to make those connections. So just to give you an idea of what we accomplished in the first year, this kind of shows you just a map of Ohio, and all the little dots represent all of the materials posted and wanted. There's a heat map. That's weird. Keep going, keep going. All right, so we have 700 users on there approximately, and we just launched this last April. The U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. Has anybody ever heard of them? Few, maybe two, not many. They're the ones that we actually hooked up with these folks. They're out of Austin, Texas. Where is Texas? Where is Texas? Seriously, where is Texas? They need to be here. No, they need to be here. There's 29 people in that program. They need to represent. 700 users, buyers, sellers, transporters, 160 materials processed. We ended up diverting 3.3 million pounds of waste from the landfills in the first year. Cost savings about $152,500 for businesses, and about 140 metric tons of CO2 reduced. Another thing is we have a recognition program. We stole this from, we're wrapping up. I get it. We're wrapping up. Oh, we're wrapping up right now. All right. I see the little sign. You got your hand on it like I'm going to show him. Okay. All right. Cool. We call it OM, because we love our acronyms. OM. Materials Marketplace. No? So we have a recognition program. We had a gentleman from IDEM that became our director, which is the same as like a commissioner, same as an administrator. So for Ohio, we call them directors. But we stole their, he kind of brought it along, and he said, I wanted to encourage an environmental excellence program. We call it E3, but we also integrate sustainability into this because we have 4 different levels. The first one is achievement. This is like our gateway drug. We want to get the businesses or the communities hooked on doing something sustainable. Just like just about everybody in this room, I'm guessing, you can't throw a single pop can into the regular trash. It's like a sin or something. Oh, I can't do that. Well, we want businesses and communities to do the same thing. So we have 4 different levels: silver, gold, and gold's really where they have a comprehensive everything, all the aspects of their facility. And then platinum is where you have not just incorporated sustainable practices within your property boundaries, but you've actually gone out into your community and done incredible things as well. There we are at the Cleveland Indian Stadium. Cleveland Indians, they have done a lot of cool things at their stadium. They can't win, but they do good stuff. Some more future integration. This just happened 2 weeks ago, and I'm super stoked because now I have millions of dollars at my disposal. Woo! So the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, they had a recycling program, several $1 million recycling grant program, and we took it. Yeah, we're like, give me money, and we took it from that agency and we put it into Ohio EPA, and bada boom, bada bing, now it's in my shop. So I'm super stoked. So we're hiring some new people in there as well. But that's a great way. Just shows you what we do. This is what we did in 2017. We have a litter and a community grant, basically for communities to get recycling containers, get certain types of recycling equipment. Market development is taking some kind of waste stream, and if you have an idea to turn that in to something that's a usable product, we will give you 50% off of your recycling equipment. We're better than Walmart. Scrap tire is the exact same thing, but it's dealing with scrap tires. I'm moving. I am moving. Whoop, that's way too fast. All right, see this gentleman is about to fall into some poo water. So this guy, we have a, what do we call them? Compliance assistance unit. And these people don't know it yet, but because I'm in management, I know what's happening. They're going to be moved into my group too. We're approaching Texas size now. But what they do is they troubleshoot small package plants for, and typically small businesses like apartment complexes and stuff like that, just sanitary package plants. And then we have state revolving loans within our division. We're a part of this division, the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance, where we give, and I think most everybody knows this, but for those who don't, we give below market level interest rates for communities to get wastewater treatment plants and drinking water plants. And last year, we gave out more than $1 billion in loans, which was a record because in the whole program's history in 25 years, we only gave out 9. So that's huge. But $54 million of that is principal forgiveness. So that's a grant, basically, that's free money. Now, there's all kinds of opportunities there where we can implement sustainable type of activities and then incentivize them. This is one of my ideas. I haven't really shared it with too many people, but you guys are the first to hear it, is to implement sustainable ideas into when these communities come to us with their engineering designs, if they put in variable speed drives, pumps, whatever, find ways to reduce their energy, we can incentivize them with even lower interest, maybe even principal forgiveness. So this is the kind of idea, any town in Ohio. And by the way, I'm from Newark, Ohio, and some of you know this. Some of you know what I'm about to say. There's Newark, New Jersey. Well, there's a Newark, Ohio, and it's just east of Columbus. And I live out in the sticks, and what we call it is Nurka-High. Nurka-High. That's how they pronounce it. Did somebody say aw? That's cute. Yeah. So anyway, any town, Ohio, basically we have business up in the top left, drinking water plant in the top right. In the center we have wastewater treatment plant. Down in the bottom left is a community description, anaerobic digester in the bottom center, and then different things that we can do for the waterways, wetlands, and stuff like that. We can implement pollution prevention literally in every facet of what we do in our division. All right, I'm done. I don't know what do I have left in time.
Fabulous. We've got about 10 minutes for questions.
10 minutes, all right, cool.
Where's that extra house?
Hi, Tony.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I feel really good about being honest.
Yeah.
No, so personally, I'm pretty opposed
You have
to.
something real to say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm personally, here we go. Okay. I'm personally quite opposed to regulators confusing requirements with best management practices with stuff like that.
Why is that?
Because it's bad. It doesn't let the company know what's required and what's suggested and let them know the truth. I always like them to know the truth.
Sure.
And then they can make the decision on which of those recommended things they're going to do. You mentioned, and one of your things that you work the P2 right into the middle of it. Is there a way where you block it off so that they know that it's just a suggestion? Is it combined with regulatory stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The first goal is compliance. By far, that's our first goal. But can you do something where you don't have to deal with that regulation anymore and it gets you out of it? You're still in compliance, but you've implemented P2. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but they can tell the difference. So
Oh, absolutely.
On my drive thing, well, not on mine, but on the one that my people took away from me and did, they confused the heck out of what's required and what's not. And they were saying things like, you have to have 3 filters. Really? Because that's not a requirement here. So I pushed back and they ended up color coding everything. And red was you have to do it, and blue was we suggest you do.
Good question. Lisa, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Jennifer, you mentioned helping employees kind of make the business case to their management for P2 upgrades. Have you ever done something similar to that where to help them make a case to their lenders to get funding to make the
It actually could be used in either case. It's hand in hand. Once you have the analysis, we actually recommend that they do a feasibility analysis for financial related and economic, is it going to be a good investment? So that piece of it will be critical to sell it to the lenders. Yeah.
okay.
What about
So I was wondering, what percentage of the people that you help with the pollution prevention side are small businesses?
Probably, that's a good question. I would say maybe 50%. Definitely in our, if we're talking about some of the, are you talking about our site visits and things like that? They're the ones that can see it better. They can definitely see it better. And I'd have to run numbers to tell you, like.
Yeah, and then how do you get in touch with them? Are they calling you about P2? I want you to come out and
No,
let's do a P2 review.
no, they're not calling us for P2. They're calling us for compliance assistance.
So this is a value add.
So-
that you would hear yourself.
Yeah, so if we see something while we're there, we're going to mention it.
And in Ohio, we do get called specifically just to do a P2 site visit. And that's just through our marketing, doing presentations, that sort of thing. But and back to your other question, I'd say, I think very similar to IDEM, our full-blown P2 site visits, they are typically all large businesses. But that program never had the stipulation of a small business. So, but it's like Jennifer said, they're the ones who really have the time, the staff to dedicate that. The small businesses, they're trying to keep their employees off drugs. They're trying to, pay their lease at the end of the month and try not to get, at least in their mind, shut down by the EPA. So we do more guerrilla P2, and that's more what I'm talking about, of like that low-hanging fruit, little regulatory incentive type of things that you can do. And those are typically all small businesses, not the big ones.
This question's for Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Your Ohio Materials Marketplace, is it restricted to only Ohio companies because of the way it's funded, or can companies from other states jump on board the website and see if they can make a connection?
Because it is funded through solid waste disposal fees in Ohio, what we don't want is waste coming into this state to recyclers. But what we do allow, and you maybe saw in those dots, there's plenty of recyclers outside of Ohio, right on the property line or wherever. I said property line, that was weird. But that we do allow the waste to go out, to be utilized by somebody else. Good question.
Dan, question for Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Dan,
I like your name.
Another question on materials exchange. We have one as well, and we provide technical training and consulting to the reps. The one thing we run into a problem is people trying to exchange materials that is actually not a material that has hazardous waste.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's tricky. And our hazardous waste program had a lot of consternation over this when we first launched it. In fact, there were some businesses that were, they were specifically putting hazardous waste on there. And then we had the treatment, storage, and disposal facilities for any of those taking notes, I figured I might as well spell that one out. They wanted to get on there too. They're like, hey, this is a great way for us to get more material, free advertising. But we are 100% behind the scenes. So we reach out, or at least attempt to reach out to literally every single entity that posts anything on there. We help them if it is a hazardous waste and it's a spent material and there's literally nothing you can do with it short of sending it to a TSD. Now I'm going to use the acronym. Then we'll let them know this isn't really the appropriate place to be posting that, and you might get yourself in trouble and the person, taking it. So it's just, that's the active management part of it, unlike Craigslist. But that is an issue that we've had. Businesses don't necessarily know. Now, I don't know how much everybody knows on the hazardous waste world, but there are ways, that you can still take a hazardous waste and its characteristic byproduct and all that and recycle it. So just because it's hazardous doesn't necessarily mean it can't be recycled or it can't be reused. Ideally you want a business that has a byproduct, and it may be hazardous, but without any prior reclamation, it's used as feedstock into another person's process. That's ideal. That's circular. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And really all of the materials marketplaces, it's just a conduit. That's all that is. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we fought a little bit with hazardous waste.
That's a challenge in those waste exchanges.
Yeah.
It's having somebody monitor them, definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple of questions. One is by a show of hands, how many people integrate P2 into compliance is a question online. So raise your hand if your program integrates. So we're looking at, for the people online, we're probably looking at 12 to 15 of the people represented here. And then another question is, well, Jennifer, I love the way that you went through P2 with the 3 steps. We usually use change the material, change the process, change the technology. And anyhow, I'm going to steal your method. It's really good. The other question for you is, do your people in your P3 kind of rewards program, do they get any regulatory relief like we used to get with environmental?
They do, yeah. We actually have rules that were established for the environmental stewardship program, both environmental stewardship program and the clean program. Both get regulatory benefits. So things like reduced reporting, they have, what else?
More timely permits?
Expedited permits. They have, some of them are non-regulatory, so I'm trying to go down through the list. Like they can have the same inspector year after year. They can have the same permit writer. A lot of the regulatory side are the ones in the world are more water-based ones. So a lot of it is reduced reporting requirements.
And we have the exact same thing in Ohio. Any other questions?
This just kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the administrative oversight for your program and materials marketplace. FTE wise or time wise, what do you, how many employees do you have doing that oversight, or how many hours?
Over the materials marketplace, we will have, well, I'm not a proponent, it's just my own management style. I don't like the idea of having one person to do any specific job, because when that one person leaves, you just lost and you got to catch back up. So I like to do a hybrid approach. Almost all of the positions, and the same thing with integrating the P2 into the districts, it's making hybrid type of positions. So it's hard to say. If you want to count all the district staff, there's 13, but, actively working on it day in and day out, really it's about 2 or 3 people, FTEs. full-time employees. All right. Thank you, everybody.